If you were with us on Thursday at the 4th of July party at the Blunts, it was an awesome time. There's times as a pastor, I tend to spend a lot of my time looking into the future and looking a couple of weeks down the road. But there's some times where I just stop and I'm just amazed at what God is doing in and amongst our church. And what He's doing here. And it was one of those moments that I had on Thursday at the 4th of July party. Thank you so much, Trey. I don't know what I did, but I broke it. Okay, I don't know how they fell out. Then I couldn't get it open. Okay, am I on? Okay, good. I won't yell anymore then. Until I get into my sermon, then I'll start yelling. But I say at the 4th of July party, and I was thinking, first of all, I was like, this feels like my family. Like, it felt like a large family gathering. I don't know about how your families are, but in my family, we had a little over 60 people there. And in my family, whenever we all get together, it's a little over 60 people. And nothing was planned. It really wasn't organized all that much. We just told everybody to show up at a particular time and bring food. And in my family, that's what we do. We just tell everybody to show up at a particular time and bring food. And the people who showed up, they brought food. You looked in the pool, and there were 2 dads in the pool that were watching all the kids. There were about 30 kids, 2 dads. It was perfect. And they're, oh, wait, I'm going to get to the moms in just a minute. But the moms were sitting on the outside of the pool just counting the kids every now and then to make sure there were the right number of heads. And now the moms did get into the pool. Whenever they got into the pool, we lost the water guns. We were told not to splash anymore. And you weren't allowed to play in the pool anymore. You simply were allowed to stand whenever the moms got to the pool because they didn't want to get their hair wet. I know. It sounds like a family gathering, doesn't it? And then, and there was a bocce ball game going. I've seen bocce ball before, but it was extreme bocce ball. Like, we had the little kids that we were trying to keep under control, but then we look up, and there's up on this hill, and there's bocce balls flying in from on top of this hill, and I was like, the little kids are trouble, but the big kids are dangerous. And then we had a firework display, and I don't think it was legal. I'm not sure, but I don't think, it just didn't seem right what was going on. We almost set the Blunt's house on fire. It was great. There was a little fire going on, and then Corey Heffler went over, and he put it out. He saved us. It was great. But to me, in the midst of everything that's going on, it showed to me that we're a healthy church. And I saw it in this way. Right now, we're also planning for the backyard Bible clubs. And the backyard Bible clubs, we have had countless hours of meetings. That's not like I don't like going to those meetings. We've had a lot of meetings about backyard Bible clubs, and there have been a lot of conversations about backyard Bible clubs. We put more money into the backyard Bible clubs than we do to any other single event that we do at Sonrise Church. And, everything is planned. We have the snacks planned. We have games planned. Every 15 to 20-minute increment of the activities is planned. We have plans for this. We have decorations that go into it. But the backyard Bible clubs aren't about us. They're about the people that aren't here right now. And we plan and we strategize for them. And whenever we do something for the community, for people that aren't here, we put a tremendous amount of effort and planning into it. But whenever we get together as a church family, we just tell people to show up and bring food. And we don't need anything else. Nobody there needed entertainment. Nobody there needed me to preach a sermon, even though I offered. I figured since we had enough people there that there was enough people gathered for me to preach, and they said that wasn't necessary. But I offered to do it, but because we're a church family. And just like with your family, when you get your family together, you don't have to plan a lot of activities. You just get them all together, and really fun, exciting things happen, like a bocce ball game and almost setting somebody's house on fire. And you just throw the kids in a pool and tell the dads to watch them. And that's what, and church family, I realize that we're a church family. But then whenever it comes to doing ministry to people outside the church, we are going to plan and we are going to put effort into it and everything else. But that's not about us. That's about the people that aren't here. And to me, that's just a sign of how healthy of a church we are. I love this church, and I just was blown away by that. This morning we are going to be in the book of Luke, chapter 21. I know it says we're going to be doing 21 verses 1 through 46. That is a typo on my part, I am sure. But we are only going to do 1 through 4. I don't know if you noticed or not. We put these in the bulletin the week ahead so you guys can read up. I hope everybody read verses 1 through 46. If you did, I'm quite proud of you. Because I don't think there are 46 verses in Luke chapter 21. But we're going to be looking at that. But whenever I was in college, I was a Bible major, but I was a church recreation minor. You ask, what does a church recreation minor do? Basically, I learned how to play games with church people. Not on them, but with them, kind of as a joint thing. And I took a class that was called sports management. Like there's some classes you take in college that sound really impressive, but really they're supposed to be an easy A. Like I went to the class and like everybody who played in our athletic programs at my college were all in this same class with me. So I mean this is easy A type territory right now. And basically we had to like plan how to go on canoe trips. And we had to make arrangements for, if we were going to build a gymnasium, like what are the steps you go through to build a gymnasium? I mean, this is good. This is good stuff. And a lot of the people in there, like I said, I don't want to say dumb jocks, because that's not the nice thing to say about people, but you know what I mean. If you've been to college, you know that group of people, that they go to school to have fun and to make easy grades. Those are the people that were in the class with me. And our project at the end of the year is that we had to put together this budget and this plan for an event that we would do, that we could perform. And I put, several days into this. Mine was relatively impressive. In fact, I went and helped 3 or 4 other people with their project as well because I had taken more difficult classes in this area of administration. And those of you who have been around me know that I'm a very impressive administrator and organizer of things. And so I went and I helped some other, that was not funny, that was not nice to laugh. And so I went and I helped them with their projects as well, and we turned in our projects, and in fact I had to present our projects to the class, and I get my grade back, and I had received a C on this project. 25% of my grade, and I received a C. This was going to change my grade from an A to a B. This was supposed to be an easy A. And now I was going to get a B. And I got really frustrated because I knew that my work was superior to the other students. And so I went and talked with the professor, and the professor told me that according to the work I produced, this is what I deserved. Well, I'd helped the other kids on some of their projects, and I knew that their projects weren't anything like mine because they did theirs the night before my help. And so I went and I put in a request to appeal the grade, and a date was set, and the academic dean told my professor to sit down and meet with me to see if we could resolve it and everything else. And I sat down with the professor and I said, why did I get a C? I said, most everybody else got an A on this project and you gave me a C. And he said, well, I expect more of you than I expect from the other students in the class. And I know what you're capable of, and what you're capable of is better work than this. And I said, well, you can't give me a grade based on how I compare to everybody else, and you can't expect more of me than somebody else. The work I did, according to the other grades you gave, deserves an A. And he said, if I was comparing you to everybody else, then probably so. And I said, well, I was told when I talked to the dean of academics that you can't compare me to everybody else. And he goes, you're right. He said, I'm going to change your grade to an A. But I'll never forget, and this is something that you get whenever you go to a Christian school. They use Jesus to guilt trip you sometimes. And he said, you want to grade based on comparing yourself with other people. He said, but I see that God wants to do something with you, and he's giving you some skills and some talents that maybe some other people don't have. And I expect more of you. And he said, Jesus has given you something. He said, you need to be a good steward of it, and you need to hold yourself to a higher level of accountability than some of the other students that are in this class. All I cared about was I got my A and I walked out of there. But we're going to be looking at that today, is that we have a tendency sometimes to compare ourselves with other people to determine if we are doing what we're supposed to do or not, where really we need to look at what Jesus has given us and to see if we're being a good steward of what Jesus has given us. So in Luke chapter 21, starting in verse 1, we have this story. This was an actual event that happened, as Luke tells us what Jesus saw and what Jesus said. Luke 21, starting in verse 1. It said, he looked up and saw the rich dropping their offerings into the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow dropping in 2 tiny coins. I tell you the truth, he said, this poor widow has put in more than all of them. For all these people have put in gifts out of their surplus, but she, out of her poverty, has put in all she had to live on. The image that we have here is that, remember, this is Passover week. Everybody's coming on. Trey, can we turn on to like 1 or 2 lights in here so people can read their Bibles? I'm sorry, I should have done that earlier. All right, that's better. We're trying to keep the lights off so it doesn't get too hot in here, but I know you guys want to read your Bibles because these lights are hot lights. Okay, can you guys see your Bibles? Okay, because I don't turn any more lights than we have to. Okay. But this is Passover week. Everybody's coming to Jerusalem. If you come to Jerusalem, the central point of Jerusalem of worship of God would have been the temple. And so if you're making the effort to come to Jerusalem, you're going to be at the temple. There's more people there than usual. And as they're coming to the temple, they give various types of offering. But this particular offering was one that would have been given to the temple treasury. And there probably would have been different chests that would have been set up to take different types of offerings. Some people may have been bringing up, it could have been like gold statues or something like that they would put in one chest. Some of the chests were designed for coins and different things. And people have walked up to these chests, and there probably would have been a small line that would have developed. And they're walking up and they're putting their money in this. And as we've learned, as it talks about the rich and the Jewish leaders, that they did a lot of things for show. And so imagine as people are walking up to this that they just aren't simply putting their hand into the chest and dropping it, but they're making sure that everybody's hearing the money as it clanks and it clings, and that they can see and that they can hear all the money that they're putting in. And then in amongst all these well-dressed men and these leaders and these rich people, there's this poor widow who's standing in line. And she's standing in line because she wants to give to the temple. Because the temple treasury would have been used to help keep the temple beautiful and take care of the grounds and take care of repairs and to pay for the people that worked in and helped with the temple. And she loved this temple and she loved God and she loved coming to this place, and she wanted to be maintained and restored for the generations to come. And so she stands in line, and as she gets up to the front, says she has 2 tiny coins. In today's terms, this probably would have only been a couple of dollars. You have some people that are dropping in larger sums of money, and she walks up and she just has coins. You know, in the book of Mark, it tells the same story. It says that the rich people were dropping in large sums of money. But again, this woman just has a few coins, and she drops them into the treasury. Well, everybody else would have been standing around, and they would have been in awe of what these rich people were putting into these chests. Where most people would have looked past this widow and not have seen what she put in, wouldn't have seen it any significance. But instead, Jesus, looking on, wants to make sure that his disciples who are with him and those people who are around him understand what just took place. And he stops him and he says, you don't get caught up in all these large sums that these people are putting in, because they're putting in large amounts of money, but this is just surplus. They haven't really given as an act of worship. They're not giving as an act that's going to cause them any financial pain or difficulty. This is just extra that they had lying around that they're putting in here. He said, but this widow, those few dollars that she put in, this is everything she had. She gave out of her poverty. She gave out of what she didn't have. And she put those couple of dollars in. And as she walked away after putting those couple of dollars in, it says that she put in everything she had to live on. That means that she walked away, she didn't know where she was going to eat. She didn't know how she was going to take care of herself. She was putting herself at the mercy probably of those around her, that somebody else would maybe help to take care of her, or else she may just simply have to go without. Where those other men that put in so much into the treasures, they were probably going to extravagant dinners. And they were probably going, and they were going to take care of themselves. They were not concerned about their welfare. They were not concerned about where they were going to sleep. They were not concerned about their food and what they were going to have, even though they put the large amounts of money into the chest. In our church, it's different than some other church I've been in and some other churches I've pastored. A lot of churches I've pastored, and as I read books about pastoring churches, a lot of the books in the other churches I've pastored, you put in a lot of work at the end of the year to make sure that you could bring in the large tithes and offerings at the end of the year. Our church traditionally, since I've been here, we've not seen a lot of resources come in at the end of the year at our church. But why is it at some of my other churches do we see a lot of money come in at the end of the year and a lot of resources come into the year? It's because people are trying to change their tax bracket, and that they're willing to give more money so that way they can keep more money. But you know, I know I've been guilty of this. I look at some of the large amounts of money that I've received in some of my other settings and the amount of monies that come in at the end of the year, and I'm just blown away, and I'm so thankful, and I have a tendency to praise those people that give the large amounts of money to the church at the end of the year, even though they're giving so that way they can keep and have more. They're giving more so they can have more. But I still appreciate it and I like it. And I have a tendency to make a big deal out of that. But one thing that has surprised me about our church is our giving actually tends to go down as we go into December because Christmas and everything else is happening. But what's amazed me is, do you know when some of our strongest giving has been since I've been here? February, March, April. What's happening in February, March, and April? Tax returns. And you know, that's the kind of church that we are. And that may be where we're at. We don't have very many people in our church that are looking to give more money so that way they can lower their tax bracket. But what I have noticed in our church is that we have people that even with their tax returns are generous. And you know, Sonrise, that's something I appreciate about our church, is that a lot of people in our church, in order for you to give anything to our church, you know what it is that you're sacrificing. You know what it is that you're giving. And whenever I come to a text in the Bible where I'm going to be talking about money, which isn't exactly my favorite thing to do, I appreciate it whenever I'm able to come up to the church and I'm able to start off the sermon by saying thank you. Because church family, month after month after month, year after year after year, we've been doing better and better and better financially. And that's not because we have a lot of money coming in from outside sources, but rather because as a church family, I believe you are becoming more and more faithful to God and giving more and more and more. And I know the financial situations that a lot of you are in. A lot of you are on fixed incomes. And whenever you give that money out of a fixed income, it's difficult. It's hard to do. And I thank you for that. And you know, we're able to receive the joys and the blessings that come from you giving more. Like we were able to bring on Ken Reed to be our associate pastor. This was his first official week. He did an okay job. We're going to work some things out. But I'm joking. We don't even have a desk for him yet. But because we are doing better financially, we're able to do more things. Because we're doing better financially, we're able to fund the Bible clubs the way that we want to, in order to reach out to the community, to tell the young people of our community about Jesus. And I just want to thank you for that. You know, we're able to pay rent to have a place like this. And thank you for what you have done. And I know for some of you, you don't feel like you give much. You don't feel like it's significant. But you know, here you have this widow, and she gives her couple of dollars. But remember, whenever you give that money and you give it to the church, you're giving it to Jesus, and the same Jesus you're giving it to is the same Jesus that was able to take a couple of fish and 5 loaves of bread and was able to feed many people. And even though you feel like what you have to give may not be much, but you're giving consistently and you're giving sacrificially, God is able to use that in ways beyond what maybe you're even able to imagine. And so I want to start off this sermon about talking about money, and I don't want to get up here and, church family, we need money in our offering plates. And I'm not going to quit preaching until we hit a certain dollar this morning. I'm not going to do that. But instead, I want to start off by just simply saying thank you for your faithfulness and your generosity. But still, we need to look at money, because money and finances, especially in our culture today, in our times, and always been true, but it seems to be more so true now. But we love our stuff, and we love our money, and we love the things that money can bring us. We love the peace of mind that having a little extra money in the checking account brings. We love the toys that money has, because, the bigger the TV, the happier you are. And the new video game you have, and the better the phone, the better you're able to talk to other people and take pictures and post things on Facebook, and it helps you stay connected with the world. We love our money. We love our things. But just like the song said right before I got here to sing, let us not want anything else but Jesus. And so often we spend too much of our time wanting money, desiring that money for ourselves. And I think one of the best ways that we can overcome that desire is by giving our money away. And by giving our money to other people. And particularly giving your tithes and your resources to the church. But while many of us, we do give, and we have less to give than maybe some other people do, and it's more of a struggle for us, I would say that most of us, whenever we give similarly to the Pharisees, and that what we are giving is out of our surplus and not out of our poverty. Because whenever we give, most of us, whenever we give in the offering, we're not giving in such a way that we don't know where our next meal is going to come from, or we don't know how we're going to pay our mortgage because we gave, but rather our giving simply changes our lifestyle. It doesn't change our basic needs and necessities being met. I know that's true in my family. Whenever we give to the church, it changes the type of car that we drive, it changes the size of house that we have, it changes the type of vacation that we have, but all that is surplus. God's taking care of my needs, and He's taking care of my needs well. But whenever we give, our giving is out of our surplus. And that's true for so many of us here. If you give 10%, for most people in America, 10% is simply a small lifestyle. It may not seem small to you, but it's a lifestyle change. And for some of you, God may be calling you to give more than 10%. I think sometimes our teaching on a tithe tends to restrict us from really praying and asking God, is this what it is that you want us to do? Am I doing what it is that you call us to do? Because I think for some of us, God's calling us to give more than 10% of our resources and income, but we give 10% and said, I have done what the Bible asks, but whenever we get to the New Testament, over and over and over again, we see the people that are getting praised are giving well beyond 10%. Such as this widow here, she gave everything that she had. And it seems to me, the wealthier and wealthier somebody becomes, the less and less difficult it is to give 10%. And I've known many people that giving 10%, that they don't feel that sacrifice at all. Because that's just a number, their number. That shows up, and if they did give sacrificially to Jesus, that number would be significantly larger than 10% of their income. Whenever I was growing up, I had my dad's parents and I had my mom's parents. My dad's parents were fairly well off. They weren't the super rich kind of people, but they were like a lot of people that grew up, post World War II. the builder generation. They had saved, they had invested their money well, and whenever they got to the retirement years, they had quite a bit of money that they had saved up and they had taken care of. And my grandfather died, and my grandmother, money wasn't an issue for her. On the other side, my mom's parents, finances were relatively tight. And they always struggled with their finances and had financial difficulties. My dad's mom, my grandma Cooper, she gave every one of her grandkids the exact same amount for Christmas and for holidays and for birthdays and different things. And you know, growing up, I loved my grandmother's gifts. Because typically what would happen is my grandmother, she would take me, if you can imagine a 7 to 10-year-old boy, and she would take me into Toys R Us and she would say, "You have $100. What do you want?" That happened for Christmas, that happened for my birthday. And you know, as I got older, that number continued to increase. Till eventually that number was as high as $200. You know, not only would she take me to Toys R Us, but she was just sending me a check for $200. With the card that she had bought at Walmart that she had signed her name to and signed her name to the check, and it was $200. You know, I used to look forward to that, and I would buy all sorts of things with it. As a kid, I loved to go to Toys R Us because back then I'd buy Nintendo games. I could go to Toys R Us with a $100 bill. Back in that day, pretty much I could buy whatever I wanted. I could buy a bicycle, and I did it one time. I could go there and I could buy new rollerblades. And I could buy the best rollerblades they had at Toys R Us. It was so much fun. And then other times she would just simply send me a check. And as a kid, it's a lot of fun to go to the bank and to give them a check and to give back a roll of 20s. That's because I loved it. As a kid, I loved it. On the other hand, my mom's parents didn't have very much money, and there were times where, you know, our Christmas presents would simply consist of a cheaply framed picture of them, that they had their picture taken at church, and had bought some of those, and it was a cheap frame, and that's what they gave me. You know, there was one time that my grandmother made a quilt and gave a quilt to a 10-year-old boy. I don't know if I needed a quilt. I mean, I appreciated it. I mean, it was neat and stuff, but I was told I couldn't play with it because I didn't know how to play with my quilt correctly, because one day I'd appreciate it. You know, but I can remember one time when I was in college, and I knew that my grandparents didn't have any money at this point in time. My grandfather called me over, and he pulled out his wallet, and he gave me everything that was in his wallet, and it was $40. I said, "Grandpa, you don't have to give me $40. I said, "I don't need $40. And he said, "I've been saving for a long time, and I want to give you this money." I remember I have another grandmother that was giving me $200 for Christmas, $200 for my birthday at this point in time. And my grandfather, it wasn't my birthday, it wasn't Christmas. And I found out later that at some point in time he had done this with all my cousins. And he was always saving up to give us something. Every time that he saw us, and he would save up, and he would save the dollar or two that he would get back in change from going to get a hamburger for somewhere else. He would save up his change, and then he would go take it to the bank so he could get 2 crisp $20 bills. And he would save up till he had $40, and he would give it to one of the grandkids. And I look back today, and while I didn't appreciate it as a kid, am I having microphone problems?
Yes.
Okay. I did? But as a kid, I did not appreciate my mom's parents' gifts. Because they were small. But I appreciated my grandmother's gifts because they were big. But you know, to this day, I don't even own a Nintendo. And I don't have any of those $40, $50 games that I bought back then. My really cool freestyle bicycle that I bought that had the pegs on the back so I could get kids jumps on the back of my bicycle, I don't have it anymore. It's gone. It lost it. I probably totaled it at some point in time, drove it into a lake. My rollerblades don't fit anymore. In fact, I quit receiving my grandmother's gifts because somebody else started writing the card and sending the check for her. And so I quit cashing the checks. But do you know what I still have from my grandparents? I still have the quilt. I still have the quilt. I still have the picture that they had professionally taken and put into a cheap frame. I haven't changed the frame. I still have those gifts. As a kid, I didn't appreciate them. I appreciated them as I got older. Why? Because those were gifts that were given out of their poverty. You know, as a dad, I'm starting to learn more and more that my wife can give my kids a lot of money to go buy me a present for Father's Day or something else. And I always thought this was so silly till I became a dad. But I've actually started to appreciate, like, whenever they draw me something or color something. Color me. I don't like when they color me. It's happened a couple of times. But whenever they color something and give it to me, and Sophie will write her name on it, and Sammy will squiggle on it, and they give that to me, I had some of those pictures hanging up on my wall. Those things have so much value to me. Why? Because it's all they have to give. All they can give is what they can create. Because they don't have any money. Why? Because we don't give them any money. But they don't have any money, but they give us everything. That they had it from my grandparents, from my grandfather. My grandmother gave me more, but my grandfather gave me what he had. And whenever it comes to Jesus, I believe he's the same way, because we see our relationship with God, with Jesus being that of a parent and a child. And I think that's what Jesus is getting at here. All these other people are giving these big gifts, and they're saying, wow, that's a lot of money. They're giving a lot to the temple. And Jesus is saying, look at the widow. She gave everything that she had. And may not amount to much to you, but to me, it is huge. It is huge. And for some of you, you might be thinking, well, I give a lot of money to the church because I know how much other people give, and I give more. That's simply because you can give more. And you know, I was sitting in a meeting not too long ago, and there's was church leaders, believe it or not. And in the meeting, actually the people that were allowed to speak and the people who they wanted to hear from were the people that had given more. Because we had a sheet of how every group had given to this organization. And the people they wanted to hear from were the people that had given the most to the organization because they felt like they had the most to say. But whenever I give to the church, whenever you give to the church, I give that money and it disappears. Well, I mean, it doesn't disappear, but in my mindset, that's no longer my money. I no longer sit here and say, well, the amount of money that I gave to the church was this amount, and now I know how that money's being spent. Because whenever I give that money, even though I put in the offering plate, that money goes to the church. And church family, one of the things that I try to do as a pastor is I stay as far away from the money as I possibly can. I know some of you have laughed at me at times and told me I'm a little ridiculous, but I don't like it. Anytime I touch any money that comes from the church, I stay away from it. I don't know how much anybody in this church gives. I have no clue. I don't look at those. You can ask Beverly. Beverly keeps that. I've never asked to look. I've never wanted to look, and I have no clue what anybody in this church gives. Even though there are times where I would like to know. I know some pastors that do know, and they know for this reason. Because your financial giving sometimes is the clearest indication of where you're at spiritually. I know some pastors that do, and I've considered it myself. See if maybe I should look, because if somebody's giving starts to dip, either A, there's a spiritual issue going on, or B, there's a physical issue going on. And whenever there's a spiritual or there's a physical issue going on, as a pastor, I want to know. So that way I can be there and minister to that person. But you know, I don't feel comfortable doing that because I don't trust myself. Because I don't want to treat anybody in here differently because they give more than somebody else. And you know, I would. Because whenever the rich person comes up to me and they say, Pastor, I'm going to leave the church, I want to be just as easily to say, go ahead and leave, as I do to the poor person. Okay, there's a lot of other things besides that. But I don't want to treat people differently based on what you give. But at the same time, your giving is a very clear spiritual indication, both to you and to Jesus. And I think it's the easiest thing to look at. Because you're able to look at, when you look at your checkbook, where is Jesus at in your life? Where is he at? And I believe that every single one of us should be giving at least 10%. And I've said this before. If you're not giving at least 10%, then don't tell me that everything you have belongs to Jesus. But in fact, I believe for many of us that God may be calling us to give more than that, 10% to him. And I said this a while back, and I still believe it today, that I believe that I want to see a great awakening in America. I want to see another great awakening. I want to see a revival happen in America. And I believe that the next revival that we're going to see in America, the foundation of that is going to be the church and the people of God are going to be separating themselves from the consumeristic aspects of this world. And instead of the church trying to receive more and more and more, the people in the church are going to become a people that are going to take their resources and they're going to start making drastic steps to say no longer are we about living for ourselves, but we're about living for Jesus. And we are going to live in a smaller house so we can give more. We are going to change our lifestyle so that we can give more. And our goal is no longer to give 10%, but our goal is to live off of 10%. And I believe if we see another revival in America, that's where it's going to come from. That's going to be the start of it. And as the church in America starts to become more dependent on Jesus financially, then Jesus is going to start to work and move as the community around us sees us. And they're no longer able to start pointing at us about trying to receive and about trying to be part of this consumeristic society, but instead we're separating ourselves from that and becoming giving. But as I read this morning, I've been convicted. As I've looked at this week, it's been a struggle for me. Because like I said at the beginning, my giving is out of my surplus. I've never given so much to the church, I've never given so much to Jesus, that I've walked out and said, I don't know where my meal is going to come from. All my giving is simply impacts my lifestyle. I don't like those impacts to my lifestyle necessarily, but it's just a lifestyle impact. But we need to handle our finances in such a way, I believe, that we resemble more of the widow than we do the rich. And if we were to do that, then we will be giving out of our poverty, where we're saying, Jesus, everything we have belongs to you. And he'll be able to take that, and he'll be able to use that to do amazing things. And this morning, if money's at the center of your life, if your possessions are at the center of your life, then what I would ask you to do is to take a moment and to say, God, it's no longer about me, it's no longer about me receiving, but Lord, rather let me live to give back to you. And you know what's scary whenever you do that, and it's hard whenever you do that? And I don't have the time, and wouldn't feel comfortable doing it anyway, but I've received more than I've ever given. And I know the stories from many of you in here. As you've given, you've received more. I don't think that's the point of giving, but I know what happens. Because we don't know what happened with this widow. We don't know what happened to her whenever she walked out. She had a couple of dollars to buy a meal with. And who knows what kind of meal she ate that evening. But she was willing to go without. But most of the time, whenever I see somebody that goes without because of generosity, they receive more back than what they gave. And church family, I want you and I desire you to become a church, to become a people that's sacrificial with your finances and giving to Jesus.